we've got massive censorship in New Zealand, so it just gets absolutely ignored. Anything in New Zealand that you write that is appreciated by thinkers overseas is immediately disregarded in New Zealand. Like, we even have radio announcers going, oh, so this guy's brought out another book, don't read it. They actually say that, don't read it.
Don't read it.
Yeah, don't read it. Because everyone is quoted in New Zealand as an intelligence agent. Actually, they're actually counterintelligence agents working for intelligence agencies. So, but the thing you asked earlier about, Americans coming to New Zealand and not being integrated, one of the things you have to appreciate is that New Zealanders are absolutely fierce about protecting their ignorance. They will fight for it. They will absolutely fight, almost to the death, for their ignorance, to maintain it. They've lived with it all their life,
But Greg, doesn't that make you an outcast in your own land, because your own fellow citizens don't want to hear what you have to tell them?
Yeah, every philosopher is an outcast in their own country. And the philosopher's, just a forward thinker. But in my case, I'm an historic crime solver.
Yeah.
It's merged into forward thinking. So, I solve crimes and then I make a statement, and that statement you can use to apply to future history, and it turns out to be quite accurate.
Well, you're certainly right about, one policy being, when something appears that the government doesn't like, to simply ignore it. There's been a lot of effort to do that with books on JFK and in 9/11, and of course my book on co-authored book on Paul Wellstone. There's been a huge tendency to ignore it. But we have opportunities to break through now and then. For example, the Huffington Post, which is very popular here in the U.S., an electronic journal that Arianna Huffington created, has published 2 pieces that were scandalously wrong. One about a Dartmouth professor who claimed that backyard photographs of Lee Oswald were in his judgment, authentic, where he studied just one feature, just the shadows beneath the nose. And even then, he apparently only studied one photograph, because the shadow beneath the nose remains constant across multiple photographs in multiple poses, which, of course, is impossible as a physical phenomenon. So it created an opportunity to attack, the myth the government would promote about Oswald, even though most of the American people reject the official account of Oswald as a lone assassin.
So that guy falsely analysing the photographs was a professor?
Yeah, at Dartmouth of all places.
Yeah, but that's why he's a professor, because he will toe the line. Like, for instance, I've written 5 history books, right? Right. And I applied New Zealand to the most prestigious history university, Otago University, to do a master's in history. I've already got a degree, so I applied for a master's in history, having written 5 history books. And they said, we've just changed the rules. No.
They've changed the rules?
Yeah, they changed the rules during my interview and said no.
Where was that, Greg? Where were you applying?
Otago University.
Is that in New Zealand?
So, I've written 5 history books. I've got them in 37 countries, and they won't let me do a master's in history.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's closed down.
I wrote a letter of recommendation for a brilliant student of JFK by the name of Jim DiEugenio, who's published many articles, edited a journal called Probe, and wanted to apply for a PhD in history. And in my letter of recommendation, I was extolling his knowledge here, and how they would have someone in their course who actually knew more about JFK than they knew. I think that was the kiss of death, Greg.
Yeah.
They didn't want somebody, a student, who knew more than they knew.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, we could get back to Michael King's murder. He was the chief historian in New Zealand, and he'd just written a book called The Penguin History of New Zealand, and it sold 70,000 copies. In New Zealand's a small country, and if you sell 1,500 copies in New Zealand, it's a bestseller.
I understand.
So I think
all my books, I'd be happy if all my books together had sold 70,000 copies.
Yeah. So he sold 70,000 copies, and during those sales, he was given an award. So he was travelling from the Coromandel up north to stay on a holiday for 3 days. And so he's travelling along, and he got to Maramarua, and there was ipecac on the steering wheel, similar to mine.
Oh no!
Yeah, and he's about 10 years older than me.
Oh no!
So he gets fast and slow heart palpitations. He starts vomiting, starts defecating, and the steering wheel pulls really hard to the right, and he hits head on the only crop of trees in that area.
Oh my God!
Trees, everything else was just a barbed wire fence. He would have gone through it. His Subaru spontaneously explodes into flames, so they had an impact-activated explosive on the petrol tank. And he and his wife, who's got multiple sclerosis, Maria Jangalski, she's sitting in the back seat with her legs up on the seat because of her MS. So they get burnt to a cinder almost immediately and have to be identified from dental records. And the car following them is driven by a Mossad couple. So if the impact-activated explosive didn't work, they had a backup remote.
You imagine they were controlling the steering too? That they had a remote control on the steering? Yeah,
absolutely. You just have a block, a pneumatic block that shunts out, and it'll on the wheel, and it'll just push the wheel hard to the right. So that happened. We've had another movie showing that. In New Zealand in the last three or 4 years, so that does exist. So then check this out. The tow truck driver in the area isn't called, neither of them, and they get a tow truck driver from far further away. No one knew about this suspicious tow truck driver until December last year, when it was about the 27th of December or so. One of my intelligence guys says, come over. That's it. Come over. So I go over there, have a chat with him, and he says, something's going to happen to your car. The SIS have fiddled with your car, and it's going to break down. And it's going to be electronic. So I go, oh yeah, okay, take that on board. So I'm driving down to Maramarua, and I'm driving past where Michael King was killed. And my car breaks down electronically. It goes from 4 cylinders to 3-cylinder to 2 to 1. And I break down 5 kilometres. The car actually started to break down, my car, exactly where Michael King was killed. So if I stopped straight away when it went from 4 cylinders to 3, I would have been parked outside. It's called Heaven's Rest. It's the place where he's killed, Heaven's Rest. That was an occult hit. So I sit there on this metal road, and the car's broken down, and I'm parked on the corner of the main highway. And this police car comes past, looks at me, and identifies me in my car, and then carries on. And then an undercover agent in a blue WRX Subaru does the same 2 minutes later. And an SIS guy in a van comes and pulls about 20 metres away from me, looks at me in my rear vision mirror, and when I approach the van, he pretends to be talking on his mobile phone. And then he was there for about 13 minutes. And I called the AA. The AA didn't get the call for half an hour, which is very strange. So then the AA, Automobile Association, tow truck driver. So then he turns up after about 35 minutes, and he's only 10 minutes drive away. And he tells me that he was the tow truck driver on duty during the Michael King hit, and he was never called. And the tow truck driver who actually got to tow the car away, which was the evidence, was actually a guy involved in heroin trafficking.
Why do you suspect Michael?
I got that information because the SIS deemed that I should have it. They didn't want to tell me. They had to put me in a situation where I'd get that interview, get the local knowledge and the local detail. But Michael King was killed on the 29th or 30th, the date is undecided, 29th or 30th of March